Good morning, everyone. I'm back again today. It's great to be with everyone this Thursday. Yesterday, I took a little break to help cook. It wasn't just me, help cook about 500 servings of beef stew and mashed potatoes for elderly people in Yolo County that are in need of good food right now. So it was a great day, and it was really fun to work with chefs and farmers yesterday volunteering, and but it's nice to be back today with coffee with a farmer or resource manager. So we'll go ahead and get started and do our normal round robin of introductions of farms coordinators around the state. And today's question, because our guest is Sarah Hulick from Full Harvest. If you have not heard of Full Harvest, you're going to learn a lot more about it. This is a great company that's doing pretty amazing things, and we're thrilled to have her on today to talk about it. And it's the perfect timing to talk about excess produce and all of where it should go, and even in normal times, let alone in times of what we're dealing with right now. So today's topic, or at least question, is about what is something that you have a tendency to overbuy on the produce or fruit side, but it could be anything that you notice maybe at the end of the week or at the end of the 2 weeks that it's kind of going rotten in your fridge or somewhere in your pantry. And what is that? And I just want to hear from everybody as to, we all try to be good, right? But in the end, there's always something that we have a tendency to buy a little bit too much of. And food waste is a huge issue in this country and around the world. So my problem vegetable, because I'm usually pretty good with my produce, is cilantro. I don't know why I buy too much cilantro. I love cilantro. I use it, but I get a little excited and I buy like 2 or 3 bunches every time because I think I'm going to use it all, and then I don't. And I do give it to my chickens, but I don't really think they like cilantro all that much because it doesn't really get eaten. But that's my thing. I don't know why, and I have to hold myself back when I'm at the grocery store. So, all right, Dana, you're up.
Good morning. I'm Dana Baker, the Tehama County Farms Leadership Coordinator, coming from Red Bluff. And I would say my overbuying has to do with produce as well. And it's probably both apples and bananas. Apples, because I always feel like that's a quick, easy snack for my kids. And unfortunately, if I don't cut them and prepare them, then they sit. And next thing I know, I'm like, ooh, where are these fruit flies coming from? Oh yeah, they're coming from the basket of apples. But oftentimes, if they haven't gone too far, I can use them and turn them into applesauce, which the kids love that. And it's a quick, easy thing to do at home. And I, like Mary, have chickens as well, and the chickens do love the apples. Bananas, I secretly buy too many only because I really love to make banana nugget cookies. And so once they've gone bad and nobody's eaten them, then I get to make fresh cookies. So that's probably my overbuy. But I do either repurpose it into something else that we do eat or give it to the chickens. And I'm thankful that I have that option.
Awesome. Joseph.
Good morning. My name is Joseph Toya. I'm the Farms Leadership Coordinator for the Sacramento Valley, broadcasting today from West Sacramento. 3 things I can be a little bit bad at. Avocados, which I feel the worst about because they're so expensive. I buy them, just a little bit before they're ripe. And I can feel it and I can see it. And then I forget about it. I eat some other things and I'm like, oh no. And then you open them up and then they're kind of gray, or they have those little brown veins going through them. And then it's like, oh, they're not so good anymore.
That too.
There's this huge bag of power greens that I buy from Costco that I love. It's just so flexible. You can turn it into a salad, throw it in a bowl of ramen, throw it in some eggs. So much you can do. I'd find that little by little, it doesn't matter how much I add to something. It's so difficult to finish that whole bag before they start to turn. And the last thing, very similar to that, is the carrots. I love carrots. They're super great, just raw. And it's one of those things that finds its way all the way to the bottom of the produce. drawer in the refrigerator, and then a couple weeks later it's like, oh, now they're all like sort of like rubbery and flimsy, and
Yeah.
and then
Even the chickens don't like them then. All right, Katie, you're up.
Good morning. My name is Katie Workman, coming from Fresno. I'm the Central Valley Farms coordinator. I would say vegetables are probably the hardest. Probably spinach. I kind of forget about it. It gets kind of stuck in the back of the refrigerator, in the bag or whatever it comes in, and it gets all gross and soggy. So, but we do have chickens, and my daughter has 2 guinea pigs. So if we get stuff like the ends of carrots or the ends of broccoli and asparagus, those go to the animal, those animals, just kind of for fun. So, but yeah, the spinach in the back of the fridge is my most wasteful.
Yes. All right, Romy.
Good morning. My name is Romy Wattenbarger. I'm the Kern County Farms Coordinator here in Bakersfield. And I would say mine is the same as Dana's. It'd probably be bananas and apples. And with everybody else, we have chickens and, of course, goats. And they love bananas and they love apples. They eat them whole like their snacks. So we would give them to them if they go wrong.
Yes, you've got lots of things to be able to eat up your extra. So that's awesome. And Letty.
Well, I kind of feel bad because I must be the most wasteful because I don't have chickens to feed my produce to. Some of the things, though, that I do end up throwing away are like my root veggies. My potatoes will just start growing. And then also beets. I love beets, but nobody else in the family does. And so I find myself buying a bunch, hoping to eat them, and then I don't eat them all for sure. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it sounds like we have a lot of similar types of challenges. That's great. Thanks, everybody. So Sarah Hulick, I'm going to introduce you now as our guest today from the company Full Harvest. And Sarah and I actually originally met each other because before Full Harvest, you worked for Cabrillo or Hartnell? Cabrillo? Cabrillo College. I'm trying to remember. So Sarah and I met through my sister, who's works at Cabrillo College, and Sarah worked at Cabrillo, and she thought we would have some things in common. And then especially when you went to Full Harvest, we had even more things in common. Mm-hmm. So Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, a little bit about your background, and the job that you have today.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's really interesting to hear everyone's food waste stories. Thank you, Mary and Letty, for inviting me to join you guys. I do want to start with my food waste story too. I think mine is like Katie's. I think it's spinach, because I love spinach and I buy it a lot, but it is so hard to get through that big bag. But I have a compost bin. I have a worm compost bin, and so I just throw the yucky stuff in there. So I don't have to feel too bad. It's not going into a landfill, although obviously it'd be better if it was, going in my belly instead of a worm's belly. But so like Mary said, my name is Sarah Hulick. I do grower innovation at Full Harvest. I grew up on a small farm in upstate New York. We raise kind of like diverse cattle, diverse livestock, dairy goats, did about 40 acres of alfalfa Timothy hay. The area has a lot of horse farms, a lot of apple farms, and we would sell forages to like other farmers. Was our main income stream, but we were not making our living off of the farm. It was more of a hobby situation, but definitely strong roots in agriculture, and I never wanted to do anything else with my life. I literally just knew I wanted to stay in ag. I was in 4-H and FFA as a kid and as a teenager, and I would say FFA really helped like solidify that ag was really diverse and that there were like a lot of opportunities outside of just my kind of small town of what I could do in agriculture. I moved to California. I am joining you from Watsonville, California today, which is like strawberry capital of the world. And I moved here 7 years ago. I had just finished up graduate school and was kind of just looking for that dream job somewhere in the world. And I ended up taking a position at Driscoll's, which is based here in Watsonville. And I've since moved on, obviously, but the tie to the berry community and this place is really special. It's a really special place. And especially if you want to be in ag and you want to do great things in ag, there's really nowhere like specialty crop world of California here. And then my current role is doing grower innovation at Full Harvest. So Full Harvest is kind of the first online produce broker platform. So that's our tech. So we are an ag tech startup. So we're very small. There's about 20 of us at the company. We're venture capital backed. So that means we have investors who kind of see a future in our idea, even if we haven't quite blown out that idea and are making a lot of money with it yet. So we're kind of in our like incubation phase, you could say. And the thing that makes us special, beyond just the fact that we're trying to transact produce online, which is fairly rare, it's still a pretty handshake and phone call type of business, is that we focus on ugly and surplus produce. So we focus on things that are not retail grade. So it's not that beautiful #1 apple, that's got perfect coloring and no specks that you find at a standard grocery store. It's kind of everything else. Maybe it's really a really small apple or a really big apple or an apple that has speckles all over it. And that's the kind of stuff we specialize in moving. And that is why our mission is so tied to reducing food waste.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, actually, if you could give a little bit of background, I'm sure you know the numbers better than I, in terms of what kinds of food waste, the percentages here in the United States, around the world, and kind of where food waste comes from. Like people tend, like we started out today talking about what's in our own refrigerators, and I think a lot of people are surprised by how much is kind of at home food waste in terms of the overall. But if you could give us some of those numbers, I think it really kind of would set the stage of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are correct, Mary, and all of us kind of just confirmed that actually the biggest single place of food waste along like the food chain is in our, on our counters and in our refrigerators. It really is at the consumer level, along with just like in our homes. It's like at restaurants and cafeterias and things like that. I think we all can relate to that idea where our eyes were bigger than our stomach when we were out to eat and we ordered more than we probably could possibly eat in like a whole day. And then some people, take those scraps food, home, and some people don't. And so the vast majority of food waste actually does occur kind of at the individual consumer level. A lot occurs in those kitchen prep places, in restaurants. Some occurs along the supply chain. You can imagine a refrigerated truck that's bringing lettuce across the country. Maybe something goes wrong with the temperature, or maybe literally when they're unloading it, a whole pallet falls over or something. Sounds like all of us are kind of in fairly rural parts of California. I'm sure everyone's seen on the side of a road a couple boxes of produce that had flown off a truck somewhere. That kind of thing. What Full Harvest focuses on, and what I focus on, is what we actually call on-farm food loss. And so that is the food that's wasted, what is kind of termed as a before point of sale. So it's kind of before someone is buying it. And that happens at the farmer's fields, and then in the kind of initial first point of processing or packaging. And that is what we focus on. And that really is only about, it's like less than 25% of the whole food waste picture. But if you think about it, it's actually the most aggregated point. So even though it's a smaller part of the food waste pie, if we thought about how do we solve food waste in every single refrigerator in America versus how do we solve food waste on 20,000 farms in California, that problem seemed easier to solve. So that's the one we're trying to solve. We're not on 20,000 farms in California. We probably actively work with about 25 farmers right now. And it kind of changes, that number changes over the course of the seasons and the year and what's in season and who we're getting our supply from. But that is the kind of piece of the pie that we focus on, is the food that inadvertently gets wasted at a farm. It's just something that people don't really think of as food, but maybe we could eat, like a top of a celery, or maybe like the stalk of the broccoli. Probably everyone's seen the bunched broccoli where you actually get some stalk with the crown, but you also can just buy crowns of broccoli, right? And then the stalk is just getting left in the field, even though for me personally, that's actually like my favorite part. And that's definitely food, but it's just kind of part of our food culture that a lot of people don't think of that as food. And that's where Full Harvest comes in and tries to create product specifications that kind of include the stuff that inadvertently gets left behind, or gets left behind because it has a defect. You know, maybe there's some spots on it, or it's the wrong size, or if it's like a zucchini or a cucumber, it's curved just like a little too much, things like that, and get those into the hands of our customers, who are usually food processors. They're companies who are doing a value add to the food. Maybe they're pureeing it, maybe they're chopping it, something like that, where those minor defects are not important for their final product, and kind of matching these two needs that in the past have actually been very disparate, but it just needed a kind of like person in there to figure out who can use what.
You're the bridge then between, like you said, the farmers who have this produce that is being harvested, and then somebody who really doesn't care, like you said, that it's not perfect. I mean, I think that a lot of times people have no idea. I mean, I know I had been in ag my whole life, and I really didn't have any idea until I kind of got into processing facilities to know how perfect, literally, and the size, like you were talking about, Sarah, how things need to be.
Yeah.
For certain, you know, especially retail, and that so much, you know, isn't going to fit those exact specifications. And this is us as consumers. This is our fault that we want something that's so totally perfect for whatever reason, because that's just been the norm that we've grown up with, that an apple has to be this size, or this color, or an orange, whatever. And I think we don't even realize it in ourselves sometimes, but we all do it, even though we probably know better, but we still do it when we go to the store. And so that's what happens, right? There's all this extra stuff. So I was going to ask you who some of your customers were, and you said food processors. Is there any that stand out that I don't know if you can talk about any of them, or if that's all confidential side of things, or like maybe you can explain a product that has come out of some of the things that you've worked on.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we started out, our founder, Christine Mosley, had been in the kind of cold pressed juice world in New York City, where they're making these cold pressed juices that cost like $13 a bottle. And that was where the idea for the company came from. And she was kind of like, why are we buying this perfect produce to blend it up and stick it in a jar of juice, and then we have to charge like this crazy amount for it, and then people who really need access to this really good nutrition don't have access because it costs $13 a bottle. So a lot of our customers are juice companies. Usually the ones if you look in the kind of cold pressed juice case at a Whole Foods, probably a lot of those brands are our customers. And then we also, one of the newer things we're doing that's been really fun to develop is we've been making some veggie snacks products. So kind of like veggie chips and things like that. And that's been the juice idea kind of, you know, you have to connect the buyer's concept and the farmer's concept of, you know, what they can accept and what, sometimes it's really truly is what will fit in their processing machine. Like if they can only take watermelons this size and the farmer has a lot that are this size, sometimes we still can't quite make the match happen. But with the veggie chips, we got to do a lot more kind of like food science R&D and figure out, oh, is this gonna be too fibrous or is this gonna be tasty? And so that's been a really fun project. So those are a couple of the things.
And there's so many more of those veggie chips and veggie snacks and like extruded, you know, the Cheeto style but healthy, right? There's so many of those right now, and the whole snack food industry, I guess, is just really going through the roof. I mean, in terms of explosion, in terms of sales and growth.
Yeah. And I think even right now during our coronavirus crisis that we're in, this public health crisis, people can't go out. We're also, a lot of us, you know, we're all tuning in from our homes right now. Normally, a lot of us probably might actually be going somewhere today and then eating out our lunch or our snacks or something. And now we're kind of stuck at home, and there has been a reduced demand for fresh produce. A lot of people don't seem to want to chop up that cabbage, you know, to make their salad at home. But a lot of people, I think the snack world, and there are certain sectors of grocery snacks, baking, that are still doing really well, because it's the stuff that it's kind of comforting, it's easy, while we're all kind of in this like just crazy time.
It's true. So I want to ask you more about what you do, your role with Full Harvest. You called your position title is grower innovation. Yeah. So what does that mean? Like, why do you, with your ag background? I think you're one of the few people at the company, right, with actually having ag background. Is that right?
Yeah, there's just a couple of us. So I sit within the supply team. So supply at our company, meaning farmers, right? Because that's what we're supplying is the fresh produce. And I think there's 5 of us on the supply team. We do supply and logistics, and 4 out of the 5 of us have connections to agriculture. Everyone grew up on a farm, or grandparents still had a farm growing up. My background, so my training, my bachelor's degree is in plant science, and my master's degree is in plant biology, horticultural biology. And my background, a lot of my jobs I had before this were actually in research. So I would do applied agricultural research. How can we efficiently water this lettuce? How can we prune this blueberry plant to give us higher yields? Things like that. So I think that has come in really handy in this current role as grower innovation, because I'm able to quantify what we're seeing in the field. So sometimes with the grower's permission, we'll do some kind of waste surveying just to really get a feel for what is truly there. So for example, cauliflower is a crop that they'll harvest 2 or 3 times, kind of depending on the condition of the crop and the market conditions. Is it, if the demand's really high for cauliflower that week, they might go in a 3rd time. So even though on the 3rd pass, there's quite a few less cauliflower heads still there, if the price is really good, that might still be worth it from a labor perspective. And so we went into a field and the farmer was like, yep, I'm done. We did 2 passes. My fields are ready. And I get much better labor efficiency from going into a new field with a harvest crew. So we're just going to move on. And then I'm able to walk through that field and survey and figure out how many cauliflower heads are left, what % of them are something we think our customer would take. And then the grower can take those numbers and look at, you know, it still really is, at the end of the day, it really is about the labor shortage in ag. Sure. Kind of everything goes back to that. And it's like, they can figure out with those numbers, okay, we know that there's still maybe 2,000 heads left in this acre, but we can't make that work financially because we can't bring a crew back in here. But maybe if we had given them a purchase order the week before when they were doing their last harvest, they could have harvested their retail crop, their perfect, beautiful, pearly white cauliflower and our ugly stuff at the same time. And then often that's kind of how we can make the economics work on the grower side and, you know, reduce this on-farm food loss. So I think that is where, and just like in terms of, I grew up on a farm. I know farming. I've been in it my whole life. And I think that really helps just relate to growers and make full harvest just more available to them and more, you know, I can talk the talk when I'm in a field and I kind of know what they're experiencing. And I think that, you know, that really helps the growers work with full harvest more.
Well, it looks like Mary we lost her, which sometimes happens. Oh.
Probably the internet. I have a question. Like, I know this is kind of devil's advocate, but like, why not just harvest everything and donate it? Like, you know, how many people are without food and take it to food banks or make it a secondary, you know, if it's cauliflower, make the new like cauliflower rice. Like, I know it's a devil's advocate thing that I'm making this, but like there's so much extra food, and if we just keep digging it in, and I know it's about, I don't know if you can kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Katie, and super timely too, because right now what we're experiencing with the coronavirus disruptions to the market is a lot of surplus food. There's a lot more produce that doesn't have a home than normal, and that's mostly because all the restaurants and cafeterias are closed. The food service side of the industry is very, very low on demand. I think maybe it's down like 70 to 90% is the numbers I keep hearing. So there's a lot of food in fields that doesn't necessarily have a home, and we've probably all seen the articles with these lines of people at food banks that are really hungry. So yes, there's this huge disconnect, and how do we solve for that? So there's a lot of kind of economic factors that go into this. One of them is that I think California actually has done a really great job where they have a really good tax credit for farmers who, if the food is grown in California and gets donated to a California food bank, farmers get a 15% tax credit at the end of the year off their kind of California tax bill. And I do think that does a great job of incentivizing. And my understanding is like a huge amount, hundreds of thousands of pounds of California grown produce get sent to food banks each year. Right now, we're in this moment where there's like more hungry people than normal. And I think we're still a bit of a shortage. So the question being, why can't they just harvest the whole field? Well, when farms grow for contracts, so maybe a big cauliflower rice producer actually pays the farmer to plant 10 acres and harvest 10 acres. Often that is actually what happens. They'll harvest everything. That's what the contract says. We're going to buy every single head of cauliflower. But a lot of times the farmer is actually harvesting more for retail or, you know, and the ones where the cauliflower is packed with a nice little plastic wrapper on it. And then they might not actually know like what to do with that extra 15% that's still out there. And it might take the crew so long to like differentiate the product that it's so expensive that the farmer, even though they might want to utilize every single bit, it would actually take a lot of resources away from their harvesting crew, their warehousing crew, who then has to maybe cool it in a different way, maybe put it in different packaging, and then get it to the food bank. One of the other hard things with food bank donations sometimes can be that, of course, we want to send decent food to food banks. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, a farmer called Full Harvest and had a bunch of peppers, like bell peppers, that he needed sold by the next day. And the price was like rock bottom. He wasn't making any money. It's like, you know, he basically they'd picked these peppers kind of only when the coronavirus thing was just starting. And then they're sitting in a warehouse and, you know, a week's gone by, 2 weeks have gone by, and now they have like maybe 48 hours before someone needs to puree these things or something. And at that point, when we get that call, the food bank can't take them because the amount of time to get them there, and then the food banks need about 4 or 5 days of shelf life on the product so that they can distribute it to their families and their community. So, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, man, why can't we solve this? Like there's food, there's hungry people, but it is just one of those things that's so complex. And I would say that I think our produce farmers do a good job of diverting produce to food banks when it makes sense. Often when it's already in a warehouse, it already got picked, and then the market, they lost the market. That's often the easiest. Sometimes it's a little bit harder, I think, for them to take like a harvesting crew and divert their harvesting crew to pick something that they really don't know what they're going to do with. Now, I think if we could get to a point where there was like, we weren't in such a labor shortage, or we didn't have such a like insurance thinking culture, where we had to worry about, well, what if we let people come harvest it, but then they broke their leg and then they sued the farm. So there's all these crazy things that the farmer has to kind of like weigh when they're making these really hard decisions, where it's just like, man, we want to get this food to someone. So I see Mary's not here. I'm just going to transition away from this question into one thing I've seen and some things we're working on that relate to what Katie asked with kind of getting food to people in need right now. And then actually, what time do we go until, Letty?
It's actually 30 minutes, so we're right at that time. But if you want to do the last note in regards to the question.
Okay, sure. So what we're just seeing is a lot of farmers are being really innovative and thinking of ways that they can take food that they had planted, 90 days ago for food service and get it to people instead. So we've got one big farm we work with who has proposed that they make like a direct to consumer box. So instead of packing this box with like 14 pounds of broccoli florets, now we're going to pack it with 3 pounds each of broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, romaine, and try to get those to people in need. And then I would say I think the federal government has earmarked some money for buying produce from American farmers and getting it to people who are in need. And what we're working on, Full Harvest is working on a couple proposals at both the California state level with a couple other for-profit and kind of nonprofit foundations, just to figure out what are the logistics of this. And if someone, and it'll probably be either the federal or state government, can come up with like a grant, and we could actually give the farmers money for the produce and not just ask them to donate everything, because they're really taking a lot of losses right now. That I think we are gonna hopefully at least solve part of this, like get this food to food banks and school districts, because school districts are doing a lot of like meal prep and food dispersion right now. It's really amazing how some of them have really stepped up. So I do think a lot of ideas are in the works. Maybe in a month or so I can send you guys a little update.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on. I think Full Harvest is definitely answering the call to make sure that our food is not entering the waste stream and into the landfills. And I'm excited to have you on, and we just appreciate you being here and talking with us today.
Thank you so much. It's nice to meet all of you. Thanks everyone watching, and I appreciate being here with you guys.
All right, we'll check in later.
Okay, ta-ta.
Bye.